Ây, Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So I guess we can get started. I was going to wait for more people to join, but they can trickle in while we're doing the icebreakers for today. So first of all, though, I'd appreciate if any of you guys could turn on your cameras. Uh, I know I've said that in previous classes, but it's nice to see faces, you know? But if you're having like technical difficulties and you can't turn on your camera, then just let me know in a private chat message. So yeah, thanks Bryce for turning on your camera. Um, it's not fun to just talk to a bunch of black boxes on Zoom. So it makes it feel more interactive when I can see you guys. Great. So either in the chat or you can raise your hand, answer what is your favorite game? And that can be like a board game, uh, or a video game, uh, or any type of game, like a card game. So yeah, just put that in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you. Yeah, we got Monopoly. That's fun. Minecraft. Nicole likes Monopoly and Minecraft. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Minecraft. I guess a lot of you play Minecraft, huh? Okay, great. We can keep those coming, and I'll move on to our second icebreaker, which is what sports or instruments do you play? And if you don't play any, then you can just say what's your favorite hobby. Piano and violin. Wow, you play two instruments? That's really cool. Sally swims. That's cool. And Taekwondo sounds really cool, Bryce. Great. Any others before we move on? And Nicole says she used to play piano. Ooh, softball. And Anna plays oboe. Great. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So basically, right now I'm just gonna quickly go over the homework policy. So with like last week's assignments, a lot of people haven't been turning in their homework, and I appreciate those of you who have been doing the homework. So basically every day uh that you don't do your homework, it's 10% off. So if you submit it late, you get 10% off of your grade every single day that you don't turn it in. And since this isn't really like a as strict of a class, it's pretty lenient in terms of homework. Um, it's fine if you just can't get something done. Just let me know if you have a good enough reason, but just try to get your homework in. For these assignments, for last week, I'll give you guys a little bit of an extension since I know we're just, easing into this class still, maybe for some of you. So yeah, I'll just make a point to say that all the homework is going to be due by tomorrow night for week two. Great. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to go over that. Okay, so now let's get on to the lesson. Today we're going to be talking about genetic variation and natural selection. Maybe you guys have learned little bit about that in school, but for now we're going to go probably a little more in depth into it, depending on what grade level you are, I suppose. So yeah, this is our syllabus. We already did introduction to heredity and Mendelian genetics. So this is week 3. Uh, and yeah, you can see week 4, week 5, and week 6, which we will tackle in the coming weeks. But yeah, for today, we're going over genetic variation and natural selection. So first, let's go over the evolutional basics. In biology, evolution basically means uh, the gradual change in a species over time. Does that make sense? And it usually entails three concepts, and that includes adaptation, fitness, and survival of the fittest, which are central to understanding evolution. And we'll go over that later in this presentation. So I know we already talked a lot about genetic variation in the previous weeks. So just a review, it's basically the diversity in the genetic makeup of individuals within a population. So it's basically what sets us apart from other people in a population and what makes us different. Nicole, yeah, you can eat Skittles. You can eat whatever you like during my class, as long as you're paying attention. So yeah, as we talked about, genetic variation is really important for evolutionary processes and the ability of species to adapt to changing environments. So we touched a little bit on that last week, uh, or the first week, I believe. So you should already have a pretty good grasp of that. So here are the sources for genetic variation. One can be mutations, and mutations are basically random changes in DNA sequences that introduce new genetic variations. And we're going to be going over mutations more next week, because that's what we're going to be focusing on for that lesson. There's also something called gene flow. So this is basically the transfer of genetic material from one population to another. For example, it can happen between two populations of the same species through migration and reproduction. And there's also something called genetic drift. So this is basically the change in frequency of an existing gene variant or trait in the population, typically due to random chance. So it's basically a change uh, in the traits, in the more popular traits in a specific population. There's also sexual reproduction, which involves the fusion of genetic materials from two parents, which leads to, different genetic combinations in offspring, which can also promote genetic diversity within populations. So how do we measure genetic variation? Scientists can use special methods like heterozygosity and polymorphism to measure how different our genes are within a group of animal or plants. And I know those terms sound a little hard, but I just wanted to introduce some of these methods because they can be pretty important in studying evolution. So if you'd like to, um, you can go into more research on that, and I might also include um, some links that explain these better in the extra resources that I'll provide after the lesson. So imagine it's like counting how many different colors of M&M candies you have in a bag. So those like colors might represent different traits. So basically, it's a job of the scientists to determine how um, how popular one color is over others, or just in general, figure out the spread of the different traits in a population. Okay, so now let's introduce natural selection. So basically, natural selection is the way that traits increase an organism's chance of survival and reproduction in a population. It's driven by environmental factors and the competitive advantage certain traits offer. So basically, this might seem confusing at first, but we're going to go over a few examples that will make it clearer what these terms mean. So here's an example. Okay, so here you see mice. There are some black and black furred mice, and then there are also mice that are colored that have a lighter color of fur. You can see that the environment they're on, or the ground, is dark, so it matches the color of the brown or the darker mice's fur. So basically, you can see that they kind of blend in. The bird represents a predator, which is typically an important part of natural selection as well, because it's a environmental factor that usually has a big impact on natural selection. So basically, a population of mice has moved into a new area, in this case, where the rocks are very dark. So due to natural variation, some mice are black while others are tan. So some of mice are eaten by birds because those are the predators. So why do you think that more of the tan mice are gone rather than or eaten by the predators rather than the black mice? So this is because they blend in more when the black ones blend in more with their environment. So it's harder for the predator to see them and um, use them for food. So basically, this gives the black mice a way bigger advantage in surviving and being able to reproduce and leave offspring. So because black mice have a higher chance of leaving offspring rather than tan mice, the next generation contains more black mice than the previous generation. Does that make sense? Any questions before I move on? Because it's the basic gist of it. So Nicole asks, why do black mice have a lower frequency of being eaten? So basically this is because the black mice blend in with the dark rocks in their environment. So you can see that they match the color of the ground. So that makes it harder for the bird, which is the predator, to see the mice. So they have a less chance of being eaten. On the other hand, the tan-colored mice, they stand out in their environment. So they're more likely to get eaten because the bird can see it more easily. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. I'm gonna move on. So now we're gonna talk about the role of genetic variation in natural selection. So we're gonna connect these two concepts. So basically, genetic variation is the raw material for natural selection to work on. Changes in gene frequencies due to genetic variation drive the adaptation of species to their environments. So an example of this is conservation biology. Genetic diversity is really important for conserving endangered species because, like we talked about in um, our first week's lesson, is that genetic diversity increases the chances of a species survival because, different traits will allow them to adapt differently to their environments, and some of those traits um, might help them more in a specific environment than others. So if everybody is the same, then if they encounter an environment that doesn't match with those traits, they might be wiped out. So conservation efforts must consider the genetic variation within populations to ensure long-term survival, which is what I just talked about. So here are the three key terms. Adaptation. So adaptation is about changing to better fit in with your surroundings and survive. Fitness, on the other hand, is how good an animal is at staying alive and reproducing in its environment. And then survival of the fittest basically means that the animals or plants that are best suited in their environment are the ones that are going to typically survive and be able to reproduce. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, these terms are pretty much connected really closely, but they're all a little different. So here are some more examples of natural selection. One is camouflage in insects. This can include their body colors and patterns, in vegetated environments and visual predators. So their body color and patterns can, make them harder to see, um, uh, for predators. So they have a less likely chance of being eaten. There's also antibiotic resistance. So genetics and resistance mechanisms. This includes exposure to antibiotics in hospital settings. So if something has antibiotic resistance, it has a greater chance of surviving because it won't likely be affected by um those substances. Another example is a giraffe's neck. So basically, what is being adapted is their neck, its neck length, because usually giraffes adapted to uh, eat foods in high trees. So that's why they have long necks, so um, they can reach there. So they have competition for food in the treetops, like it says on the slide. So here is Darwin. Basically, he is the person who made the theory of natural selection. So he was a British naturalist, um, and he's really famous for making groundbreaking discoveries about how life on Earth changes over time and adapts. So let's go more into what he did and how he discovered natural selection. So at age 22, he joined a 5-year journey on the HMS Beagle as a naturalist. So basically, that was a boat, and they were going on a voyage that took him to places like the Galapagos Islands, which are really important in discovering natural selection. So basically, on these islands, Darwin observed a lot of unique animals and plants, and he noticed specifically that finches, which are a type of bird, they had various beak sizes and shapes. So he wondered, why do these birds all have different beak shapes? Like, what is the purpose for that? How did they come to have this genetic variation, right? So basically, he discovered that the finches actually had different beak sizes for their different foods that they ate. Some of them with longer, sharper beaks uh, needed them for seeds, and some of them focus on eating insects, etc. So those are some examples. Nicole asks, what do finches look like? Um, they're they pretty much look like normal birds. I'm not sure if you can search that up on your own time because I don't want to take away from the presentation. But yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. So yeah, they had different beaks for different diets because they ate different foods, and those foods needed different types of beaks, which were best for eating them or gathering them. So Darwin realized that the finches adapted to their environments through natural selection. So basically, as the finches were in different habitats and they had different foods in their environment, they adapted to make their beaks um, more capable of eating those specific types of food. Great. Okay, I know there's a kind of a lot on this slide, but I'll go over it briefly. So here's some evidence for not natural selection. Um, one can be transitional fossils. So these are basically just remains of organisms that provide evidence of like different evolutionary stages for species. So these fossils can show how these species change over time. And there are also anatomical similarities, so these refer to physical resemblances in the structures of different species that suggest common ancestry and shared evolutionary history. There's also geographical distribution, which basically explores the patterns of where different species are found on Earth, which kind of shows the relationships and history in terms of evolution. And there's also artificial selection, which is a process of where humans like intentionally try to breed plants and animals to have specific traits, which kind of mimics natural selection, but not in but in more of a artificial way, so that humans can direct the outcomes of it. So yeah, you can see this in the selective breedings of dogs or crop plants, for example. Oh yeah, and they're also direct observations. Um, so just, just observations over time of physical traits. Okay, so future trends. Basically, advancements in technology like high throughput DNA sequencing are transforming our ability to study genetic variation. So all these advances are going to continue to improve medicine, conservation, and evolutionary biology because they give us a lot of insight into are the factors specifically behind a lot of different things. So we can always apply this information to a lot of different fields. So it's really important to know and understand this. So now for conclusion, I'm gonna go over just some main points. So basically, first, genetic variation is the driving force behind natural selection and the engine of evolution. It's really essential for species adaptation and survival. Yeah, we went over that in the previous weeks, like I've said, but it's a really important point to know. So make sure to understand that. And for number three, genes play a huge role in how life on Earth changes and survives in various environments. So this plays into Mendelian genetics, right? You can kind of see a connection since genes are basically what caused all these variations um, in populations. So they're pretty much the basis of all of this stuff we're going over, which is why this class is genetics, right? So obviously that's very important to know. So, and also here's a review of some aspects of natural selection. We have variability, which is diversity of traits present in a population. An example is different shell colors in a turtle population. Adaptation, these are inherited traits that improve survival and reproduction. An example of this is having like a longer, slender beak in terms of the finches on Galapagos Islands to help them, uh, you know, uh, be more capable of um, eating their specific food type. And there's competence, which we didn't really go over, but it's kind of similar. It's basically a fight for limited resources in an environment. So this can be like a dispute between male lions for access to females, for example, or like just in any situation where there is um, a food shortage, so that there has to be competition between animals, between like who gets the food. And there's also selection, which is the process by which certain traits are favored or selected for. This includes selection of pale butterflies in industrialized areas due to camouflage in dark trees. Yeah, if you have any questions about that, um, ask me now because we're kind of wrapping this up. So I just want to make sure all you understand this because it's a really important part of genetics. Okay, no, so I'll, oh, Jaden, did you have a question? Okay, I guess not. So I'm gonna move on. Okay, so here's just a little practice activity. Um, so you can either write your answers in the chat or raise your hand. So just take a moment to look at it. Basically what I want you to do is place um you see the little concepts below in the boxes under the table. So basically I want you to put them in the corresponding part in the table. Like for example, in a rainforest environment, what do you think would be a beneficial adaptation for that? That might be a hard one. What about desert? So in a desert, what do you think would help an animal survive? What trait? Does anybody want to give it a shot? Okay, I'll give you two options. I'll give you out of three options. So let's say either
I
thick.
think. Well, I think
Okay,
desert is probably drought tolerance.
yeah, great job. It's drought tolerance. It's definitely drought tolerance. That's great because in the desert there's not a lot of water. So yeah, and Jaden said drought tolerance too. Yeah, great job, guys. So yeah, that's just an example of how an animal living in a desert environment might adapt, because they need drought tolerance to better survive. And yeah, Nicole said camouflage for rainforest. Yeah, that's very important too. Honestly, camouflage can work for all of these because um, it's a way for animals and plants to hide from things that might eat them. So yeah, great job, guys. Let's see, what about ocean? Which trait do you think would help in an ocean environment? Yeah, Jaden said diving ability. Yeah, great job. Okay, what about mountains? For mountains, this might be a little trickier. Oh yeah, it looks like you guys got it. Nora and Bryce said cold adaptation. Yeah, that's right, because usually they have a high altitude, so animals that live up there it will be colder and they'll have less air typically. Yeah, Jaden also said cold adaptation. So yeah, great job, guys. It's cold adaptation. Okay, so we have this again. We have like another activity thing. But for this, oh yeah, also Nicole said thick coat. Yeah, great job. That works too. So for this activity, you're gonna try to fill in each of the cells and you can write your answer in the chat or raise your hand. So first, we're gonna cover camouflage. What do you think is the survival advantage of camouflage? And I know we already went over this a lot. Um, but yeah, maybe give a quick summary about it. And then also write how to transmit it to other generations or how it's transmitted. So any ideas? Okay, how about I make it a little broader. So you can choose any one of the response types. You can do either camouflage, flight capacity, toxin resistance, or ability to obtain food. And then you can talk about the survival advantage, um, and transmission for one of them. Oh, Nicole said I don't get this assignment. Um, so yeah, it's just like a little activity, uh, that you can write your answer in the chat for. So like for example, camouflage, a survival advantage of that is basically predators won't be able to see you, so you have a better chance of surviving. I think that's an example of something you might say. Then for transmission, you can be like, this will allow uh the organism to be more likely to reproduce and transmit their genes to the next generation, to their offspring. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, does anybody want to try tackling that?
I guess for camouflage, the survival advantages is you're not easily seen by predators.
Hmm. Great. Thanks, Anna. Okay, if nobody else has any answers, I guess we can move on. Thanks, Anna, for trying me in. So now just write in the chat or raise your hand. What was something new you learned today? It can be like a random fact or a general overview of a topic. Do you guys want to list anything in the chat? Like, for example, you can talk about like what kind of traits can be beneficial to an animal. Oh, Nicole said she learned that black mice are more likely than tan mice. Yeah, in our case, that was true because the ground was black, so it matched the fur color of the black mice. But let's say they're in an environment uh in that's on a ground that is tan, so it matches the color of the tan-furred mice. So that would make the black mice more susceptible to predators. So it might be a lot less beneficial for the black mice. Yeah, so yeah, Nicole, about what if it was a different ground color? So yeah, the results would probably be different. Um, but it really depends. Let's say if it was something like totally different, like blue or something. Like it really depends if it's lighter or darker. Um, but yeah, there are a lot of different environmental factors that could affect the outcome or like the direction of natural selection. So it really depends. So like I was saying, if the ground was tan colored, then the black mice would actually be the ones who would get more eaten by predators, and then the tan mice would be able to survive and reproduce more frequently. So yeah, thanks Nicole for asking that question. So anybody else? What else did you guys learn? Hoping you learned something. Nicole asked another question. Would the black or tan mice be more lucky if the ground color was gray? Um, I suppose it kind of depends on what shade of gray it would be, but if it was more neutral, um, I think the black and tan mice would probably be neither of them would be lucky. They'd probably get the same results, and they'd probably be eaten by predators, the same amount. So that would just mean that there would probably be the same number of black and tan mice over the next generation too. So yeah, it would probably be equal for both. It just really depends on how easily it is for predators to see them. So yeah, great question, Nicole. Thanks. Okay, so do you guys learn anything you want to put in the chat? Well, I hope you guys learn more than you're letting on. Um, so any more questions before we move on to our next activity? Yeah, Nicole asked some really great ones. If you have a question, just don't hesitate to put it in the chat or raise your hand. So do you guys understand what natural selection is and how genetic variation uh, relates to natural selection? Did any of you guys have studied this before or have already gone over natural selection in your own classes? Or was this kind of new to you? Can you put that in the chat? Just so I know like where everybody is at. You can private message me if you want. Just be like, yes, I've learned this before. Or no, I didn't. Yeah, so I think it looks like some people have already gone over this stuff before. Um, so yeah, just know that I have a pretty broad range of grades in this class, like from fourth graders to all the way to 12th graders. So it's really hard to find that balance of how to teach the class because I don't want to make it too hard for the fourth graders. I don't want to make it too easy for like the middle schoolers and high schoolers. So it's really hard to find that balance. That's why I usually offer some extra resources at the end of every class. So I'll be doing that this week. Um, so yeah, I just don't want to make it too hard for some people who might not be able to understand, in case they've probably not gone over this before. But yeah, next week I'll try to, um, I think next week's lesson will probably be, um, more new to you guys, since mutations, and we're gonna be going um, specifically into like different kinds of mutations, and how they affect the body, and then also like how they can lead to genetic disorders. So yeah, that's gonna be a big theme for next week. So yeah, thanks for sharing, guys. Okay, here's just a fun fact I thought I'd share with you. I thought I'd share. Um, so if one person's DNA was unraveled and placed end to end, it would actually stretch from Pluto and back. So I thought that was a really cool fact. So it just goes to show how your DNA.
Do you guys know why the host left?
Isabel, we can't hear you. Still can't hear.
What about right now? Can you guys
Yeah.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I think. Let me try something else.
I think the microphone you were using before was fine because I could hear you before, but now I can't.
Okay, what about now? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
now it's good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but whenever I plug in my charger, I guess my audio is not working. Um, okay, so let's get back to what we were doing. I don't think, I think it's fine that we lost a little bit of time, because we'll still be able to do, we're gonna do. So here is the slideshow. We went over the fun fact. It's loading. So yeah, um, for the homework and project, I don't think we have enough time to go over it right now. But just know that I posted a bunch of assignments on Canvas, and there's gonna be a project that I'm gonna have you work on. That's gonna be long term. So I'll post that assignment in Canvas, and you guys can look at the instructions, but you aren't really gonna have to work on it or worry about it this week. Um, so yeah, so that's the end of this lecture. And then I have the quizzes for you guys. So I'll share my screen for that. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay, guys, go ahead and follow the instructions on screen, and you can go to joinmyquiz.com and then enter the code to play the quizzes. So yeah, it doesn't count for a grade, just for some practice. So yeah, it includes all the stuff we talked about in class today. So hopefully you guys can do good on that. I'll try to wait till everybody's joined. Okay, so I see that 4 of you guys have joined. We don't have much time left, so um, if you haven't joined already, try to join as soon as you can. Okay, we'll be starting in another minute. So let me know if you if you're having any technical difficulties or connection issues. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start it.